So you're interested in diving deep into the Sapphire Inkwell. The idea of ramping ahead in resources against your opponent to play more powerful cards sooner intrigues you. Well, look no further than this video as we dive deep into Sapphire's ramp cards to see which cards you should be running in your Lorcana deck. First off, I want to thank everybody who helped me make this video. I initiated a community discussion on ramp cards by posting a question in Lorcana's Facebook groups. I asked the members of the Lorcana community for their thoughts and opinions on various ramp cards used in the game. The responses I received provided valuable insights and diverse perspectives on the impact and strategies related to ramp cards in Lorcana, specifically Grandma Tala, Detective Mickey, Belle, Fishbone Quill, and One Jump Ahead. In today's video, we won't be talking about Lantern despite it having its mini ramp capabilities in Amber, but it does have the same implications in some avenues. So whatever information you get from these ramp cards, you could also pertain to Lanterns as well. First on our list, we will be discussing Grandma Tala. She is a 2-cost 1/1 with the effect that reads, when this character is banished, you may put this card into your inkwell face down and exerted. From my personal experience, Grandma Tala kind of acts like a Pascal, where she'll continuously quest for one over and over again, as your opponent sometimes will choose to ignore Grandma Tala and not attack into her at the cost of you not gaining more ink in your inkwell. But sometimes they will just attack into her regardless, and then you actually gain that ramp sooner. This card raised the most divisive opinions on its value throughout the community. People either love it or they absolutely despise it. Some people praise it, some people say it's unplayable or it shouldn't be played at all. Let's see what the community had to say about it. I love Grandma for ramp. One Jump Ahead and Detective depend on the deck. I play Amber Sapphire Princesses and can't spare a single one of them, especially without knowing they were inked. They don't work in that deck at all. Fishbone Quill is great. I don't run Belle in that deck, mostly because I don't have any, but she also isn't necessary in it. But she's good. I don't think both Fishbone Quill and Belle should be used as ramp together unless paired with a color that allows a lot of draw. So here we get the perspective from an Amber Sapphire player praising Grandma Tala in their deck. We have another player who primarily runs Sapphire, and they said, I run Sapphire with a focus on ramp and items. I use 4 of Grandma and Mickey. That's a lot of grandmas right there. We do have some people praising it, but let's look at the opposite. In my opinion, Grandma is useless for anything but ink, so I don't run her at all. Here's another player. I don't play Belle or Fishbone for the same reason. They force me into top decking sooner. My blue-red deck has me in gold on Pixelborn currently, and my ideal turns are 1. Develop your brain, last-ditch inkable hand fix. Turn 2, Tala. So here we got another player running Tala and Phil as a backup. Another player says this about Grandma Tala. She seems interesting at first, but anytime I play her, I realize she's just too slow. You play her on turn 2, but can't actually ink her until turn 3. She's not a strong stat line and really just good for the bonus ink. Maybe if you go up against a Lilo/Maleficent kind of card, she gets more value, but that's rare right now. She does have some use in the sense that your opponent might not want to eliminate her, so she can just keep questing unharmed until your opponent decides they need to stop it. That doesn't really help your ramp though. So as far as ramping goes, she is probably the slowest of all the ramp cards. There is something about Grandma Tala that is nice though. You can sing the next card we're about to mention, One Jump Ahead. Next on our list is a song card, One Jump Ahead. It's a 2-cost uninkable that reads, put the top card of your deck into your inkwell face down and exerted. Pretty straightforward. The first downside to this card is that it's uninkable, meaning out of all the uninkable cards that you're going to have in your deck, you're definitely going to have to consider as to whether or not you're going to want to run this one, as most people right now are running anywhere between 10 to 12 to 15 uninkables. Here's what some of the community had to say about One Jump Ahead. One Jump Ahead has the same issues as Mickey regarding uninkable. Not being able to track the inked card and basically being 2 cards for 1 ink. I know the argument about inking the top card of your deck is that you will rarely ever draw your entire deck. So the unknown top card is no different than the never drawn bottom card. Still not a fan though, personally. I debate the uninkables and ink slot with this as well When deciding whether to include this in your deck, one upside to this is that it's singable. You could theoretically play Tala or Mickey and then sing this to really ramp the ramp. Another player says you'd rather have one jump on turn 2, but when you need one more ink to cast Hades, top decking one jump is just a sad trombone, which I can totally understand. For me personally, I don't run one jump ahead. If I'm pulling one jump ahead late game, I'm pulling my hair out because I wish I would have pulled a different card. Out of Grandma Tala, Mickey Mouse Detective, Belle, Fishbone Quill, one jump ahead is definitely my least favorite card out of all the ramp cards. Now we have Mickey Mouse Detective. He's a 3-cost, uninkable, 1/3 with the effect that reads, when you play this character, you may put the top card of your deck into your inkwell face down and exerted. Detective Mickey seems to be the most well-balanced card out of the ones we just mentioned. The fact that it gives you a body and it puts one card on the top of your deck into your inkwell kind of guarantees that ramp that you're looking for. The downside is that it's uninkable and you don't know what card you're inking. That can sometimes be a deal breaker if the card that gets inked is a huge part of your win condition. But from my experience, Detective Mickey has been pretty helpful. Detective Mickey does have a decent willpower stat, so when he's buffed up with cards like Bill, he can actually be a threat and take out a considerable number of cards like Simba Bodyguard or the 3-cost Hans. But for the most part, if you can pull a Detective Mickey in your first starting hand, you're in a pretty good spot for ramping at least up to 5 ink. Let's see what the community had to say about Mickey Mouse Detective. He's a better body than Tala, but being uninkable forces you to have to play him. Personally, my decision making on including Mickey or not over the other options usually comes down to what other uninkable cards I have in my deck. And what else do I have in that 3 ink slot versus what I would rather play. I'm also not a huge fan of inking a card that I can't see from the top of my deck. Since you will never know what that card is, it's hard to track your remaining cards and know your outs. It's also technically 2 separate cards just to gain 1 ink and a small body. The only advantage of inking the top card of your deck is that you inked a card that didn't come from your hand, essentially saving a resource in hand. A lot of truth to that. Mickey is king. Grandma and one jump ahead are kind of doing a similar job in very different ways. Mickey is a body to take out small stuff, ramp, and lore with. He can also sing several songs. Detective Mickey definitely feels like the most versatile out of the ones we just mentioned and what we're about to mention. He's a body, he quests for 1. He guarantees that you actually ramp by inking the top card of your deck, but drawing Mickey late game isn't necessarily something you want to do. Running Mickey at 3 or 2 may be helpful for that specific purpose of ramping early. Now we have Fishbone Quill. Fishbone Quill is a 3-cost inkable card that when exerted, puts any card from your hand into your inkwell face down. So this is nice because you're able to ink cards that are uninkable. For instance, if you have Hades in your hand, you want to ink it, just exert Fishbone Quill, and there goes Hades into your inkwell. The drawback to this card is that you're inking a card from your hand, so in a sense you're losing resources a lot faster than you would like. Let's see what some people had to say about Fishbone Quill. Fishbone Quill I found is better suited with a color pairing that can draw you cards. Example, Amethyst Steel. Due to it eating cards from your hand, with repeated inking from Quill, you really need to be able to utilize a lot of ink later in game into long games. What I do with my Steel Sapphire ramp deck, I turn 2, 1 jump ahead, turn 3 Fishbone, and 1 jump ahead again. Should have 6 to 8 ink turn 4. Fishbone over Mickey all day. Run a late game Tamatoa to quest for 2 to 5 depending on how many Fishbones you have out is good. Quill is obviously strongest as long as you can keep replenishing your hand. The fact it stays on the board, can be used every turn, and can't be banished by an attacking opponent, meaning they need to destroy it, which means it needs to be run and drawn, will net you the most benefit. It also says any card. So there is no stipulation that it has to be an ink card, which means you could throw in some purposeful throwaway cards in there specifically for this. Not advisable, but possible. In the right deck, Fishbone Quill is considered one of the best ramping cards in the entire game. And lastly, we have the most expensive card of the ramp cards, Belle, Strange but Special. She is a 4-cost inkable card, 2/4, and her effect is during your turn, you may put an additional card from your hand into your inkwell face down. And then also it says, While you have 10 or more cards in your inkwell, this character gets +4 lore. This card serves two purposes. One, it is a win condition all on its own. If you can get to 10 ink, she becomes a major threat, and she is basically a dragonfire magnet. But as far as ramp is concerned, she's able to put an additional card from your hand into your inkwell face down. Now that card has to be inkable. It can't be an uninkable card. Now, asking the community, it seemed like people chose not to run this card either because they didn't have it, or maybe their strategy or their deck just didn't have a need for it. From my personal experience, Belle is one of the best cards in Sapphire to close out games. She's the winning condition. Her ability to ink an additional card is extremely powerful, especially after a whole new world. I've been in situations where I was able to ink 3 cards a turn, 4 cards a turn, and get to those really high ink numbers, so that when I'm using my beast mirror, I'm constantly inking and I'm constantly drawing a card. Let's see what some people had to say about Belle. I feel like people hoard Belle a lot for end game finishing potentially, but you should really play her on a curve if possible and utilize the double ramp as much as you can. If you have 4 Belles, using one to ramp fast early on so that your other Belles or threats can be used sooner is a better play than trying to stuff too many ramp cards into your deck just so you can use those ramp and threaten with Belle. My current Sapphire Steel deck uses Fishbone Quill and Belle only for ramp, with other threats so that I don't feel obligated to hold Belle for endgame threat potential. Regarding the rest of her potentially, she's inkable, 4 health requires more than just smash to eliminate her, and paired with Aurora Dreaming Guardian, she becomes a major threat. So as far as ramp is concerned, she's pretty good. She's mid-game ramp, and she is a threat late game because of her second ability. From my personal experience, Belle is the only reason as to why I've been winning more games than usual. If your objective is to ramp as high as you possibly can and play powerful cards, having Belle in your deck makes it so that you can solidify your win. Questing for 5 is huge mid to late game, and she becomes a prime target, but when paired with Aurora Guardian, she becomes a huge threat. And if you ever need that additional ink, she's the girl to have on the field. Well, there you have it, everybody. Thank you for watching my video. There is another card on the horizon. I believe it's a 4-cost, uninkable. Whoa, wait a minute. This is looking kind of spicy. What do you guys think about this new card that they're coming out for Floodborn? I know that there's other content creators who have made videos on this card already. Go and support those other channels by checking them out. And as always, have a great day.